First of all, good morning to everyone, to the press corps that's here. We thank you for joining myself, Senator Braynon, Representative Anna Eskamani, Vice Mayor Sabrina, Javellana, and Commissioner Simmons, who are here this morning. We come to speak to right directly to a direct issue that we know that has affected, that is affecting our constituents directly, especially the people who are here on this virtual press conference right now. One thing I would like to even start off by saying that even to the leaders of the state of Florida, and that is that we cannot continue to piecemeal the help for Floridians. We know right now that there is a need, and we know for a fact that we have to protect the Floridians who live here within the state of Florida, starting off with the ensuring that people have a roof over their heads. Last week, the Florida Supreme Court issued an order suspending the last step of the eviction and foreclosure process called the writ of possession. But this does not mean the eviction or foreclosure won't happen eventually, just that it's put on hold through Friday, April 17th. And having individuals to continue to live with this uncertainty in their mind is not only unfortunate, but it continues to put a scaremongering tactic within the lives and the minds of Floridians. Just this week, there's a letter that's circulating on social media from a Bradenton, Florida property that's basically telling people that we will kick you out no matter what has come about from the state of Florida. Imagine that being a member of your family. Imagine that being one of our constituents who I know for a fact of the people who are here on this call. We have received the emails. We have received the text messages of people who are afraid and who are scared because they do not know what the next day will bring with this new pandemic that we're in. The fair market rent in Florida ranges from $694 for a 2-bedroom apartment in Washington County, Florida, to $1,600 for a 2-bedroom unit in Monroe County. So a family or individual who has been laid off and can't get another job because businesses are suspended and can't pay this rent, these individuals are the ones who we are on this call for today. The average Floridian, they are confused, they're scared, and it is our job as leaders to tell the people the truth and communicate their rights and protections to them as it stands right now. Governor DeSantis has one job, and that one job is to protect Floridians, not based off the decisions of poll numbers or what the large corporations are telling him, but protect people is the main objective. Truth be told, that we know that people are dying. So we have to stop creating this short-term rules and start creating long-term protections. The governor and the president of the United States are trying to put time frames on this virus, which is not only irresponsible, but I personally believe that it's totally malpractice. Even in papers that have been written, it indicates that this will be our reality for at least another year, if not 18 months. Dr. Fauci said it best, that we don't make the timeline. The virus makes the timeline. And so what we're asking for on this call today is one, for the governor to protect the people of Florida and starting at the top, and that is the roof over their heads. I'm now going to hand this over to Senator Braynon. Senator Braynon.
Thank you, Rep. I've been rather vocal in the media about the level, what our leadership has done and the steps they've taken and where I think they've misstepped and some of the things that they've said that don't make any sense. I think we can just look at the point that Representative Jones just made. The Supreme Court put an order out that said as of April 17th, after April 17th, all evictions are up. But just yesterday, we get a safer at home order until April 15th. So are we saying that 2 days after you can be evicted? I think we have to look at this on a day-by-day basis, and we have to have a longer term. We have to think about this from a longer term perspective. We got to assume that this is going to happen for a while. And if you look at some of the other states, they put in place eviction moratoriums until the end of the crisis. And I think that's what we're asking for. until the end of the crisis, that our solutions that we come up with should not have a timetable on it, because this crisis does not have a timetable. So all we're asking is that we understand the logic, right? We talk about the science behind decisions made, the data. What about the logic behind the decisions that are made? Look, if you're closing businesses, if people can't, if schools are closed, so people can't go to work because they have nowhere for their children to go to, then how can they go to earn rent? Even in the bill that was passed by the federal Congress, the stimulus package, landlords can seek relief for their mortgages. So this doesn't even, so we're even saying that there's a whole level of people that can get relief. Let's make sure that the bottom person, the person that has to pay the rent, has that same relief. Thank you, Representative Jones, for putting this on.
Thank you so much, Senator Braynon. Really appreciate that. Representative Anna Eskamani, it's all yours.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We know that April 1st is tomorrow, and I just paid my rent this morning, and for Floridians across the state and for Americans across the country, they're nervous about how they're going to pay rent this week because of the lack of support and guidance when it comes to their financial security. I think the reality is that if the stimulus package, well, the relief package rather, was coming faster into people's pockets, maybe we wouldn't have to worry about this, because we would have unemployment insurance, folks would see a check in the mail, and they could be able to make financial decisions that would cover their costs. But as we already know in Florida, the unemployment insurance website is a mess. People who did get into the system still don't have their weekly payments yet. And then, of course, the thousands, if maybe even 100,000 folks that have not gone onto the website, alongside the fact that Florida's unemployment insurance program has very narrow eligibility requirements, meaning that for many Floridians, they could not even apply for those benefits. And the federal program will allow them to, but that's not going to happen until either the end of this week or maybe even next week. So we have done a disservice to the hardworking families of Florida of not evaluating everyone's financial structure of what those necessary payments are every week, every month. Other states have taken action on this and put into place moratoriums on evictions and foreclosures. And I think that's important too. I mean, obviously we're emphasizing the vulnerability of renters, and the fact that I know in my community, I've gotten emails from constituents whose landlords have not only emphasized to them that there will be no delay in payment, they must pay on time, but also hearing that some landlords are increasing rent. Some landlords are actually asking for renewals in April that lead to having this tenant to leave. I mean, there's not even any type of guidance or recommendation to landlords to be decent human beings right now. And so it's incredibly dangerous for us not to address this. Not only could we potentially see more and more Americans financially strained, but we could see Americans become homeless. We could see the public health crisis become worse because folks cannot shelter in place because they don't have a place. And so it's critically important that we take action now, that the governor put into place a statewide freeze on evictions. To Representative Jones's point of this piecemeal structure we have right now, you know, some counties have stepped up to help, to delay the process. But even when I spoke to my chief judge here in Circuit 9, yes, the courts have put into place a focus on essential services, really criminal justice issues. So when it comes to evictions and foreclosures, you're not going to see, majority of our courts pick up these cases right now. But there is absolutely nothing to stop the reality that as soon as this state of emergency is lifted, you're going to see lines of landlords at courthouses trying to evict their tenants. And when we talk about mental health in the time of COVID-19, this is one of the biggest stressors that families have right now. And we have apartments that are reducing the use of their gym time, reducing the hours people can check their mails, reducing different amenities they pay for, and yet not reducing their rent. All the way to the point of college students who have ended their semester early. If they live on campus, they got a refund for part of their term not used, but they live off campus. We have cases right now in Orlando where The building managers will only let you sublease. They will not let you break your lease to go home. So that's the reality of what we're dealing with right now. That's why we need some serious action by the governor.
Thank you so much, Anna, for that. We'll now go to Commissioner Joshua Simmons from the city of Coral Springs.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Representative Jones, for putting this together. You know, I'm going to pretty much echo a lot of what has already been said. You know, it is frustrating to have to, you know, ask the leader of Florida to, you know, protect all Floridians. You know, I'm representing, you know, 128,000 people in this city. And, you know, while maybe most of us on this call and even most of my city are fortunate to be able to still pay their rent, you know, we're doing this for people that can't. You know, we've asked people to do their part. We've asked businesses to close down. We've asked them to change the way they deal with their employees, to the point that even, you know, I'm having conversations with business owners on the best way to deal with their employees after the fact, you know, dealing with the COVID-19. And, you know, when you have these folks who want to pay their bills, who want to do their part, who want to be stand-up citizens, but they can't, you know, that's where we're supposed to step in. We are the third most populous state in the union. National unemployment rates are skyrocketing. You know, how can you tell these people that they still have to pay their rent when they can't? I mean, they physically can't. You know, where are they going to get the money from? You know, we knew before this crisis that, what, a third of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck, right? We already had a out of control affordable housing crisis going on, which we still will have to deal with. You know, so we're not asking to absolve people of their obligations. What we're asking is for our elected officials and those that represent all Floridians to do their job, to help them out. You know, it's a shame that we have to ask these people to rise to the moment, right? These are moments that could make you look historic, make you look, you know, beneficent, you know, like, you know, and, you know, we're asking you to look out for those folks, right? And just say, hey, we understand we're all in this together. We're supposed to be good neighbors to each other. And just because I don't live next door to you doesn't mean you're still not my neighbor, right? If we all live in the state of Florida, we all have a duty to help each other out. You know, case law in Florida is largely one-sided to the landlord. And, you know, so when we talk about, you know, delaying these rent payments and things like that, we have to make sure that they're also not assessing late penalty fees, because they can find another way to do that as well. And so we want to make sure that when this is all said and done, there is an equitable way for people to continue to pay for the places that they live. You know, we're not doing this because we want to throw, you know, we're trying to throw stones in a moment that everybody is scrambling in. You know, I get that, you know, this is something that, even though it has been coming since last December, that, you know, they're being forced to deal with now. You know, we want to make sure that we're looking out for everybody in this crisis, and we're all pulling together at all parts. So thank you again, Representative Jones.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Appreciate it. Now we're going to go to Vice Mayor Sabrina Javellana from the city of Hallandale.
Thank you so much, Rep. Right now, from a city perspective, I've been seeing that cities are stepping up, and they have been since the beginning of this and leading in the absence of federal and state action. I made sure Hallandale Beach was the very first city in Broward to implement a moratorium on our water utility shutoffs. Every city needs to do that, since we haven't done that statewide. And if a city has an electric utility as well, they need to implement a moratorium on that. We really cannot be preaching hand washing, staying at home if you do not have electricity and water. That is painful, that is difficult, and nobody should have to go through that. We really need to be turning people's water and electricity back on. I know FPL has been working with some folks. A lot of the utility companies have been working with people. If you reach out to them, they will kind of make an extension or work with you until, you know, this is over. Our city community redevelopment agency is also working on rental assistance packages and programs for our commercial and residential residents. Also, you know, without fruitful budgets, cities can really still play a role in equitable government response to COVID and our people. So our county leaders, our sheriffs, our judges, all of us play a role. It's not just the feds, it's not just the state government. A lot of our residents in Hallandale Beach are not, you know, in the best best place right now. They live paycheck to paycheck. The average household medium income is $36,000 in Hallandale Beach, you know, which is barely scraping by to get by. Most of them pay more than 1/3 or 2/3 of their monthly income on their rent or their mortgage. A lot of our residents work in the hotel industry, restaurants, retail, hourly jobs. A lot of them have been laid off or, you know, are expecting to soon. They've lost their health insurance, and, you know, it's difficult how to prioritize your bills right now. Do you get insurance because you don't know if you're going to have to go to the hospital? Do you pay your bills? Do you buy your last set of groceries? How do you prioritize those type of things? You know, you don't know how long your kids are going to be home. You're going to have to stock up on a lot more. We definitely don't have the budgets that state and federal governments have, but we can still help and push those with more purse power than us. And I've been seeing a lot of folks pushing and the articles about HUD suspending evictions, but I think it's really important and they feel relieved by it, but it's really important to note that those are very specific to certain circumstances like public housing, Section 8, federally backed mortgages. It doesn't apply to everybody. And same thing, some counties have been implementing moratoriums in Florida. Broward County, our sheriff and our judge put out a joint statement that evictions are going to be put on hold for now. They're not going to be enforcing. BSO won't be, you know, helping in any eviction processes, but that's not enough. We really need to follow the lead of some states. I know in New York State, some senators have filed a bill to actually cancel rent for the next 60 days because I don't know how folks are going to get it together in the next 3 months with no income and play catch up. But really the first step we need Governor DeSantis to do is implement a moratorium on evictions. This county by county strategy isn't working because as we've seen, you know, you can have 2 counties. The one in the middle can have its beach closed, but the ones on top and on the bottom can have their beaches open. We need a unified response, and we need it at the statewide level. And it's already too late because today rent was due, like Anna said. A lot of families, even mine including, we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay our rent for the next couple months, and it's really worrying. But we also need to talk about mortgage relief. We need to talk about all of those things. But thank you so much for talking about this issue because it needs to be implemented yesterday. I know New York, California, a few other states have talked about these evictions and they've implemented the moratorium, really putting, I think, taking a brick or, you know, that foot off the chest of so many families who are worrying about this payment, if they're gonna have to, you know, move in with their family or if they can even move in with their family members because their parents are older. It's the #1 stressor for many folks in my city. We have the affordable housing crisis. You know, we're an urban city right on the beach, but like I said, our average income is $36,000. People are barely getting by. So a moratorium on evictions would be the very first step to really assuage a lot of our residents statewide. You go on Twitter, search Florida rent, you see so many people asking Governor DeSantis, you know, everyday residents who have no part in this political process, asking and pleading for this moratorium because they've just lost their jobs. So please, you know, keep pushing it as much as you can. We need this desperately.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. And I'm listened to the governor over the past couple of weeks, and I know he has been making mention of wanting to allow each city to do as and county do what's best for them. But I just want to let the governor know we just got out of legislative session. Representative Oscar Braynon and I sit on a committee to where that wasn't the singing tune with a lot of the preemption bills that came forth last year. So I don't know why this issue is any different to where we cannot come and tell counties and cities what's the best thing to do. And I'll end with this and we'll take questions that, I mean, Representative Eskamani said it best. April 1st is tomorrow. And I don't believe any one of us on this call here because we want to grandstand on any situation. We have real constituents who's calling our phones, who are texting us because they are concerned. And I'll read the letter that's circulating on the internet. And I'm just gonna read the one line that went out to people. It said, if you think that you don't have to pay rent because of this pandemic, you are mistaken. We still must pay the bills to keep your apartment over your head. Anyone receiving disability or Social Security have no excuse to fall short on paying their rent. That's the only part I'm gonna read. Imagine individuals receiving this type of letter or this type of text message or this type of phone call. State of Florida, to the governor, to those, I know that you all are doing your press conferences every day, but let's be real, people are dying. While the state of Florida, we need to get our act together and clearly define a plan to protect the health and economic safety of all Floridians, especially the working folks. And at this time, I will open it up for questions. And I know some of the media, I think some of your phones are on mute. And Whitney is unmuting everyone. Laura, I see 2 participants have raised their hand.
There's some questions in the chat box too, if that's helpful, y'all.
Let's see. So the question is, how is the pandemic affecting elections, getting new candidates on balance? I know that the deadline for this is May 6th. Has any one of you all heard anything as far as how this is affecting the elections?
Yeah, I can speak to that briefly. I know there's been a lot of conversations around the qualifying period for candidates, being able to collect enough petition signatures to get on the ballot for 2020. There has been conversation of advocates reaching out to Secretary of the Department of State, who oversees our elections, to extend that deadline. I qualified for the ballot back in January, so there are some of us that don't face this type of barrier, but I know for many candidates, especially those that were knocking on doors and running for very large seats that require more signatures, there is a plea to extend that deadline. I've not seen that actually happen, but there has been dialogue that because of coronavirus, people cannot collect signatures. They can't go to high traffic areas. There are no high traffic areas. They can't knock on doors, really forcing them to turn toward digital campaigns. But reaching those petition numbers just online can be a challenge.
Thank you, Rep. I really appreciate that. Samantha, I know you just asked a question. I just unmuted you.
Oh, thank you. Hi, this is Samantha Gross of Miami Herald. I had a couple questions. One about some discussion. I'm just kind of curious, if this has been discussed at all, but we're seeing a lot of furloughed, laid off workers in Miami abandon their apartments, move back in with their families while this kind of all happens. And there's no guarantee that those people will ever move back here, especially if the situation stretches on. As we mentioned, it could go for a really long time. Is the state keeping track of these people who are leaving Florida? And is there any discussion on ways to keep people here beyond this unemployment? I think that there's a kind of fear that we're losing a big workforce here because of the rent issues.
Samantha, I'll take that question on. I welcome anybody else to jump in. Listen, I don't know if Florida is paying attention to the amount of people who will leave and who are leaving because of this pandemic to move back home with Floridians, because this will cause for a mass exodus out of the state. And if we're saying we're concerned about Floridians and their well-being and ensuring that the economic well-being of individuals is what's important to us, then we need to take that seriously. Because after this is all said and done, if we really want to run a state, we should be monitoring those individuals who are leaving the state and see whether or not what type of resources we can bring to those individuals. Because a lot of those individuals are my age, they are Anna's age, who are leaving to go back to Florida, and that goes to show you that Florida is too expensive for people to live here. And when times of crisis, that Florida want people to come through for them, but they never come through for Florida. Never come through for people.
If I may jump in for a second, Rep. Jones.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So I recently wrote a Medium article about the fact of what you had said at the end about, the White House and FEMA and the state are giving, they're saying, all right, cities, do this, take care of all your residents. But, when there are corporate interests kind of encroaching into our backyards, we can't fight against that. And so what we're seeing now is more of the system of, of the companies talking to the people up at the state, trying to make sure that businesses are being taken care of or that their interests are being looked out for. When we have individual Floridians, people who, again, want to do their part, want to pay their bills. They don't want to be, they want to rack up debt, but in this time of crisis, when they are having those difficulties making those payments, you know, that they're not being listened to, that they're being overshadowed by people with bigger pockets and bigger interests in the state. And so I think what has happened is Governor DeSantis has not wanted to issue the statewide safer at home order because he's listening to those interests and not individual Floridians who are asking him, who are pleading with him. And I'm pretty sure it's people that voted for him that are asking for some of these, for these delays and this help at this time.
Thank you. There is a question from Destiny Burt. Destiny?
You unmuted her, right?
Yes, she.
You did not.
There you go. Destiny, you're unmuted. Well, her question is, are you aware of what your local homeless shelters are doing to make sure everyone is practicing social distancing? And what about areas that have reached capacity but have people who are newly homeless due to this pandemic? Anna, I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I can help speak to Orlando at the very least, but I'll let my South Florida colleagues speak to South Florida. I know in Orlando, our Orange County mayor and our city mayor have been having discussions around utilizing hotel rooms to provide housing, a shelter in place opportunity, if you will, for those who do not have a full-time home. We actually had someone test positive for COVID-19 in one of our homeless shelters. So for us, it's absolutely critical that we ensure that when we're putting down mandates like shelter at home, that everyone can actually participate. And so I know that's the approach right now of Orange and Orlando. However, it has been a challenge, and it's not even the challenge of finding hotels, also the challenge of transportation of our folks who are homeless to these hotels, which I would also argue that our homeless community members deserve wraparound services. Oftentimes, you know, their struggle is not just tied to no home, there's other elements there as well. And then the second part of your question, I think that's the point we're trying to make, right? Is that Florida already has had an affordable housing crisis for far too long. We've never prioritized the needs of working people. We have a homeless population that includes people with disabilities, includes veterans, it includes moms and single parents. And here we are, you know, not only with a sheltered home order piecemeal across the state, but folks who are out of work, folks who have kids that now need to do distance learning. And some of these families are the ones living in our motels that have closed. So this really is a wicked cycle, and we need to take it seriously. And that's why looking towards policies like a moratorium on rent and eviction will help ensure that families have one less thing to worry about right now. And again, if this was a state that had a strong unemployment insurance system, maybe it would be a different conversation now, because maybe those will be able to apply for benefits and already be receiving them. But as I mentioned earlier, we have families who got into the unemployment insurance program and still haven't seen any benefit, and they're waiting, right, and they're waiting. And then you have families that, you know, can't even get into the system.
If I could answer on the Broward side.
Please go ahead.
The CDC has actually asked local officials, they put out a guidance saying to not break up homeless encampments because it could separate them from the vital services that they need, and, you know, actually encourage spread by breaking up the encampments, which, you know, may not always be spaced out. But there was an instance over the weekend in Fort Lauderdale where there was an encampment behind the Salvation Army, and some police officers, you know, tried to tell them to, like, you know, move away or, you know, move to another area. And you know, some homeless advocates actually had to get involved and tell them, like, no, they're allowed to stay here. This isn't like an illegal encampment against like city ordinance. Because I think like the housing facilities, what I've been hearing really are, they're pretty much at their capacity right now, or they're about to be. So right now, like those encampments, it's really not the time for, you know, police or any cities to be breaking them up when that's kind of the only place these people have, and it would separate them from the services they're already connected to.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor.
Rep. Jones?
Yes, please, go ahead.
We've got like some questions backing up, and I see two about DEO.
Yes,
and,
please, I just want to recognize, go ahead. Take it.
And to Steve and Stephanie asking about DEO. That's one of the things that we've been getting the most calls about in our offices. And yesterday was particularly troublesome because the last day to apply was yesterday, and people, or day before yesterday, and people couldn't get through. So therefore, they just don't get to apply for this week, for last week. We've been complaining. I've sent numerous emails to DEO and to Secretary Lawson. You know, it was a broken system to begin with. It was already hard. The calls were coming in before the crisis about the problems people had with this whole program, combined with the low levels of the low amounts that we pay here in Florida. And I want to make I mean, we talk about failures in a crisis. This is, to me, one of the most glaring ones. And this is one that shows a problem that we had before the crisis that has only grown exponentially. I think that we, myself and many of the members in my caucus have been talking, have been sending letters complaining and talking about a complete revamp of the way our unemployment system works here in Florida, because you can't get through the website, no one answers your calls, and you know, you don't get responses back if you eventually find a way to send an email. So that is a huge problem here in Florida.
As you may, I know Representative Anna Eskamani and Representative Smith have been dealing with this directly head on. I'm so happy that you brought that into reality of what's happening within our community. There's also a question in here, anyone can tackle it from Laura Cassels, who says some documented immigrant workers do not qualify for unemployment because of alternative base. Is there any other source of financial help for them?
And where was this question, Rep? Because I think I have an answer, but I want to read it too.
This is right. Is in the question and answer section.
Q&A. Look in the Q&A.
The Q&A section, right at the bottom.
Thank you. Everyone's using all the chat boxes.
Good.
Yeah, so I think that's a serious challenge right now for our undocumented Floridians. They will not benefit from a check. They will not benefit from unemployment insurance. And so my understanding is that one opportunity where the undocumented may receive some benefit is if they work for one of our small businesses that could receive payroll support to pay for their staff. But unfortunately, we have been looking towards untraditional support structures for the undocumented. And I've actually already had 2 individuals who are undocumented or just have a expired green card. They haven't had a chance to renew. They're trying to renew it right now, but facing the of course expected barriers of everything else happening right now. And they are fearful to apply for unemployment insurance because of the reasons that we just talked about, among others. And so we're trying to find them untraditional resources, but at this point, most of the government programs coming from the federal relief package are not available to people without status.
Thank you so much, Rep. And there is this will be the last one that we go ahead and answer. If anyone also wants to jump in, and it's right there in the chat area. And I know someone just asked, where in the eviction and foreclosure legal process are you proposing that this moratorium apply? Are you asking that the courts not accept eviction foreclosure complaints at all? And what does that mean for pending cases? I think Representative Eskamani and Senator Braynon said it best, that we don't know how long this pandemic is going to take place. Some states have asked for a moratorium until the end of the pandemic. There have been research papers that have come out and have said that this can take months. This can take a long time before before we see anything of this curve going down. And so what we're asking is to not put Floridians in a place of uncertainty. And so right now, again, the Supreme Court have only asked that we go until April 17th. Our question on this call is, what happens after that? The governor has to step up and make it known that, in this time of uncertainty, that no one will be kicked out. And I know some people are asking about as far as the mom and pop small time landlords. Well, the stimulus package that has come out, Senator Braynon made clear, the stimulus package that has come out has made it clear for those individuals who are our landlords, you can receive relief from the stimulus package. So there are options that's out there, but we must make sure that we're taking care of our most vulnerable Floridians. Putting people out on the street will not make this situation even better. It will actually make this situation worse than what it already is. I really appreciate all of you all for joining us today. Thank you, Senator Braynon. Thank you, Vice Mayor Javellana. Thank you, Representative Anna Eskamani. And thank you so much, Commissioner Joshua Simmons. And hopefully we will continue to get through this together, and we will continue fighting this good fight, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Okay. Bye-bye.